The dangerous part of getting richer is not that you start taking bigger risks. The dangerous part is that the traps become prettier. When you are broke, the traps are obvious. They look like credit card debt, late fees, overdrafts, bad cars, stupid purchases, and panic. When your net worth starts growing, the traps put on a suit. They speak in polished language. They call themselves opportunity, optimization, convenience, reward, sophistication, success. That is how gravity works in money. Most people think wealth gives them altitude. I think wealth gives them exposure. The higher you climb, the stronger the pull becomes. The stakes get larger, the mistakes compound faster, and the traps stop looking like errors. They start looking like intelligence. I have watched this for a very long time. The first phase of wealth is usually noisy. You are trying to earn more, save more, and survive your own impulses. The second phase is more deceptive. Your income rises, your accounts get bigger, your confidence improves, and that is exactly when gravity changes form. At first, gravity pulls on your spending, then it pulls on your ego, then it pulls on your complexity, then it pulls on your time, then it pulls on your ability to stay rational when you finally have enough money to be dangerous. If you do not understand that sequence, you can spend 20 years building a fortune and the next 10 years quietly feeding it back into the machine that takes fortunes apart. I want to show you that machine, not as a checklist, not as a lecture, as a system. Because the wealthy do not usually get destroyed by one dramatic mistake. They get worn down by hidden gravitational fields that feel harmless right up until the moment they are expensive. The first field is what I call trophy gravity. This is the pull of concentration. When your money is small, concentration feels thrilling. One stock doubles and you feel clever. One sector runs hot and you feel chosen. A concentrated position makes you feel like an owner, when what you often are is just emotionally attached to one outcome. That attachment is expensive. If one position grows beyond its proper weight, your portfolio stops being a system and becomes a verdict. Your future gets tied to one management team, one valuation, one regulation, one product cycle, one narrative, one bad quarter, one accident of timing. That is not investing. That is identity wrapped around a ticker symbol. I do not dislike conviction. I dislike the confusion between conviction and dependency. If one stock becomes more than a small slice of your total wealth, the stock is no longer serving you. You are serving it. You start reading every headline about it. You defend it in conversation. You interpret bad news as misunderstanding and good news as confirmation. Rationality leaves the room long before the chart does. The stock may still go up. That is what makes the trap so seductive. Early success can finance future stupidity. A fortune is not damaged only by what falls. It is damaged by what captures your nervous system. Once a position has too much of your capital, it also acquires too much of your attention. That violates one of the most important rules in capital allocation. No single outcome should own your peace of mind. If wealth is supposed to increase your freedom, concentration does the opposite. It narrows your future and changes your emotional life to one asset. The second field is what I call comfort gravity. Other people call it lifestyle inflation. I call it the invisible contract that turns every raise into a new permanent obligation. This one ruins high earners with astonishing efficiency. It is why people making $500,000 can still feel like they are standing chest. Deep in water, their income rose, but their spending rose in parallel. So the distance between what they earn and what they keep never widened enough to matter. That gap is everything. Wealth is not built by income alone. Wealth is built by the wedge between income and consumption. If that wedge stays thin, you can have a large salary and a fragile life. If that wedge gets wide, even a merely good income can become a wealth machine. Most people do not lose that wedge all at once. They surrender it one fixed cost at a time, a slightly larger house, a slightly more expensive car, better schools, better vacations, better furniture, better memberships, better convenience, better proof that they are doing well. The market for status is brilliant because it does not sell you joy. It sells you maintenance. Once you buy a more expensive life, you do not get a one-time bill. You get a recurring command: keep earning at this level. Keep showing up. Keep saying yes. Keep tolerating things you would otherwise walk away from. That is why I have always cared more about the burn rate of a life than the appearance of a life. A lifestyle that requires your constant obedience is not wealth. It is a decorated cage. When income rises, your first instinct should not be celebration. It should be separation. Pull the lines apart. Let earnings rise faster than spending. Route the difference into assets before your identity can spend it. If you do not automate that separation, the world will spend the gap for you. The third field is tax gravity. People love talking about returns because returns are flattering. Taxes are not flattering. Taxes are subtraction. Nobody brags about subtraction, but taxes will often be the largest single expense in your financial life, which means indifference toward taxes is not simplicity. It is surrender. Tax inefficiency is one of the cleanest ways intelligent people donate wealth. They did not need to donate. They hold the wrong assets in the wrong accounts. They trigger gains too casually. They misunderstand dividends. They forget the difference between short-term and long-term treatment. They ignore tax loss harvesting until December is already over. They pour effort into earning and almost none into retaining. That is backward. The job of capital is not just to grow. It is to survive the layers of friction between gross returns and usable wealth. Fees, taxes, turnover, structure, timing, location of assets, account type, all of that matters. A taxable dollar and a tax advantage dollar are not the same species. A gain that compounds untaxed for years behaves differently from one that gets clipped every step of the way. This is why I have never confused activity with intelligence. In money, the elegant move is often the one that allows compounding to continue with the fewest interruptions. You do not need to become a tax scholar, but you do need to stop pretending that taxes are some final nuisance to think about later. Later is where compounding gets murdered. The fourth field is rate gravity. This one shows up in the loans people stop examining: a mortgage, a car loan, any large piece of debt that was signed in a bad rate environment and then mentally filed away as fixed fate. Laziness is expensive in debt management because debt keeps charging you whether you are curious or not. I have seen people spend months researching a $2,000 television and almost no time examining whether a rate drop could save them thousands a year on an obligation they will carry for years. That is upside down thinking. You do not refinance because it sounds clever. You refinance because math is real. If a lower rate saves meaningful money and the break, even period, fits the time you expect to hold the debt, that is not a financial hack. That is plain discipline. This is one of the places where wealthy people quietly separate from everyone else. They respect recurring arithmetic. They do not worship convenience. They do not let old paperwork keep taking new money. The fifth field is time gravity. This is where a strange reversal happens. In the early years, more labor usually helps. Your human capital is the main engine. You need hours, reps, discipline, and output. But as net worth rises, a different question starts to matter. At what point is your extra hour no longer the most valuable use of your life? That question frightens people because it forces them to confront something beyond money. A portfolio can begin to out-earn your incremental labor. A business can run without your constant supervision. A system can keep producing while you are absent. But many ambitious people do not know how to metabolize that shift. They were rewarded for overwork when their fortune was small, so they keep applying the same formula after their capital has already begun carrying part of the load. That is how striving becomes compulsion. At that stage, the trap is no longer low income. The trap is refusing to update the value of your time. I am not telling you to become lazy. I am telling you to stop measuring virtue by exhaustion. There comes a point where working more is not proof of seriousness. It is proof that you have not recalculated. If your assets can produce a large daily sum without asking you to wake up early, commute, negotiate, and absorb stress, then your time has changed categories. It is no longer just earning time. It is life allocation time. Ignore that, and you can die financially successful and existentially bankrupt. The sixth field is what I call winner's gravity. This one is especially dangerous because it arrives disguised as evidence. A few good years, a hot market, a concentrated portfolio that happens to work, a string of gains that feels too clean to be luck and therefore gets promoted to genius. Early success is one of the most dangerous intoxicants in finance because it scrambles attribution. People start believing that a favorable environment proves a superior mind, then they press, then they narrow, then they lever, then they buy options, then they confuse aggression with mastery. I have seen this movie too many times. The bull market hands someone a temporary costume, and he starts believing it is his skin. That is how overconfidence becomes a drawdown. If the first dollars you make in a rising market convince you that you have special insight, be careful. The market has a brutal way of charging tuition for arrogance. The more years false confidence survives, the more expensive the correction becomes when conditions change. You do not protect wealth by thinking less of yourself. You protect wealth by refusing to confuse favorable wind with permanent skill. That is why I have always loved simple questions. What happens if I am wrong? How much damage can this do? Would I still like this decision if I had to make it in silence, without applause, without recent gains, without the bull market cheering for me? If the answer depends on recent success, you are already too close to the trap. The seventh field is complexity gravity. This one arrives with scale, multiple brokerages, multiple banks, a few private deals, an angel check here, a real estate partnership there, some retirement accounts, a taxable account, a trust, a side entity, a pile of statements no one fully understands. People call this sophistication. Often it is clutter. Complexity flatters the ego because it feels like proof that your life has become important enough to require architecture. But unmanaged complexity creates blind spots, duplicated exposure, hidden fees, forgotten beneficiaries, mismatched risk, tax confusion, liquidity surprises, and decision fatigue. A messy financial life can look rich from the outside because there are many accounts, many vehicles, many moving parts. But wealth is not the same as sprawl. A system that cannot be clearly seen cannot be intelligently governed. If your wealth has grown enough that you cannot explain your own structure on one calm page, then your structure is already too complicated for your own good. I believe in simplicity not because it is unsophisticated, but because clarity compounds. Clear systems make better decisions faster. Clear systems reveal real risk. Clear systems let you know what you own, why you own it, what it costs when it pays, what you can sell, and what you cannot. Complexity is often gravity wearing the costume of success. The eighth field is liquidity gravity. Paper wealth seduces people because it makes them feel rich before it makes them flexible. A house can appreciate. Retirement accounts can swell. Private assets can mark higher. Partnerships can look impressive. And yet when an opportunity arrives or an emergency appears, Many so-called wealthy households discover they have plenty of wealth and not enough reach. That is an ugly position. The absence of liquidity turns opportunity into frustration and surprise into panic. You are forced to sell the wrong thing at the wrong time, or pass on the right thing, because your capital is trapped behind process, taxes, lockups, timing, or market conditions. Cash is not laziness. Liquidity is not failure to optimize. Liquidity is decision power held in reserve. 3 to 6 months of expenses is a fine rule for ordinary life. But if your net worth is growing, your family obligations are complex, your opportunities are irregular, or your fixed costs are high, you may need more than ordinary life rules. You need enough liquid power to avoid becoming a forced seller and enough optional capital to act when the world offers you mispricing. That is the part many people miss. Liquidity does not just defend, it positions. It buys refusal power, it buys timing, it buys the ability to say, I do not need to sell now, and I can buy now. Without that, wealth becomes decorative, nice to look at, slow to serve. The ninth field is delay gravity. Retirement saving is where this field does its quietest damage. People procrastinate because retirement feels far away, abstract, and reversible. A year slips, then another, then a decade. Then they finally look up and discover they were not just postponing contributions, they were surrendering compounding windows. They can never purchase back at retail. Time matters more than almost any single variable in long-run wealth creation. Start 10 years later, and you do not just contribute later. You ask every dollar to work under tighter conditions. You need more effort, higher contributions, better behavior, fewer mistakes, and more favorable markets, just to catch a version of yourself who simply began earlier. That is why the first raise matters. That is why automatic contributions matter. That is why saving at least half of each pay increase into long-term wealth building is such a powerful rule. It lets your future rise without requiring constant heroic restraint. The cruel joke of delay gravity is that it feels harmless while it is happening. Nothing explodes. Nothing sends you a bill. You just slowly trade future ease for present drift. Then one day you discover that the cost of waiting was not interest. It was lost compounding, which is another way of saying lost freedom. The 10th field is protection gravity. Insurance is boring until it is everything. As wealth grows, underinsurance stops being a minor oversight and becomes a direct threat to the structure you spent years building. Houses appreciate, liability grows, dependents rely on you. Assets become attractive targets for accident, disaster, theft, litigation, and simple bad luck. Protection is not pessimism, it is respect for consequences. A person who builds assets and never updates protection is acting like a builder who refuses to inspect the foundation because paint is more exciting than concrete. This is another place where gravity becomes refined. The trap is not recklessness in the obvious sense. It is neglect disguised as normalcy. The policy existed, so you assume the problem is solved. The coverage used to be enough, so you assume it still is. The family used to be simple, so you assume the old plan still matches the new life. Gravity loves those assumptions. Now step back and look at the full picture. A growing fortune does not move through empty space. It moves through fields. Concentration pulls on judgment. Lifestyle pulls on the wedge. Taxes pull on returns. Rates pull on lazy debt. Work pulls on life. Success pulls on ego. Complexity pulls on clarity. Illiquidity pulls on options. Delay pulls on compounding. Weak protection pulls on everything you thought was secure. This is why I do not believe the real challenge of wealth is getting rich. The real challenge is staying rational as the nature of the problem evolves. In the beginning, you need force. Later, you need filters. In the beginning, the enemy is not having enough. Later, the enemy is leaking what you have through systems that look respectable. In the beginning, you are trying to escape scarcity. You are trying to escape gravity. That requires a different temperament. You need less vanity and more structure, less reaction and more design, less appetite for complexity and more respect for clarity, less need to look rich and more determination to remain liquid. Tax-aware, protected, diversified, and psychologically independent. The people who handle wealth best are not always the smartest. Often they are the least hypnotized. They do not let one position become a religion. They do not let a raise become a command to upgrade. They do not let tax friction silently feed on returns. They do not let yesterday's loan terms keep stealing tomorrow's cash flow. They do not let ambition eat every remaining hour of life. They do not mistake a good run for permanent superiority. They do not let financial sprawl replace understanding. They do not become rich on paper and poor in optionality. They do not tell themselves there will be more time later. They do not leave the walls of the fortress unwatched. That is what discipline looks like after wealth starts arriving. Not austerity, not fear, not living like a miser. Discipline means refusing to let growth become softness. It means understanding that each new layer of wealth creates a new layer of temptation. It means remembering that the purpose of money is not to impress your neighbors, win the room, look sophisticated, or prove that you can afford things. The purpose of money is to widen your choices, protect your time, reduce forced decisions, increase your ability to say no, and let compounding keep working with as few interruptions as possible. That is why I care so much about the difference between looking successful and being unpullable. An unpullable life is one where gravity has less to grab. Your spending is controlled. Your portfolio is not hostage to one name. Your tax structure is not lazy. Your debts are examined. Your time is not blindly sold. Your ego is not financing risk. Your accounts are understandable. Your liquidity is sufficient. Your retirement compounding is already underway. Your protection is current. That life may not be flashy. It may not produce much social theater, but it is strong. And strength is what wealth is supposed to buy. So here is the test I would leave you with when your net worth grows. Do not ask only, how can I make more? Ask a better question, where does gravity have access to me? Does it have access through a single oversized position, through a spending line that rises every time income rises, through taxes I have treated as background noise, through debts I have not revisited, through work I keep doing because I do not know who I am without it, through confidence built on a lucky tape, through complexity I can no longer govern, through assets I cannot actually use when it matters, through years I keep assuming I can make up later, through protection I forgot to upgrade. Those questions sound less exciting than asking which stock will double next. That is exactly why they matter. Fortunes are rarely broken at the point of maximum excitement. They are broken in the places people stop looking because the balances got large enough to create false calm. Do not trust that calm build against gravity. That is the real work. And that is the difference between getting richer and becoming free.